everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. My name is Rachel. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about some books that I absolutely love that I think you should be reading this fall. These are my fall book recommendations. I really think that being a reader during this time of year, nothing really beats it, honestly. Like reading fantasy books during the Burr months. The coziness of it all, the magic, the whimsy, the vibes, the aesthetic, it is just so much fun. And I have a bunch of books here that I think you should pick up this fall. They give me autumnal vibes in one way or another, whether they are dark, they are gothic, whether they have an academy setting, or they just feel like fall to me, and you'll just have to trust me on that. I have romance books, fantasy romance books, I have a couple classics, I have a dark academia, I have a little bit of everything. These are the books that just really stood out to me on my shelves as like, oh my god, if you have not read these, fall is the time to pick them up. So let's get into it. My first fall book recommendation is Nocticadia by Carrie Lake. This is like a paranormal romance with a little bit of horror. It is the perfect romance to read this time of year. We are following a character who in the beginning of the book, we learn that her mother died from a very mysterious illness, and this kind of sets her off on a path to attend a very prestigious academy. She wants to research this illness and try to find a cure for it, and along the way she meets her very broody, also mysterious, and super hot professor. This is a professor-student romance at a university, and the tension between them is just absolutely incredible. I think the romance is like perfection, and I also think the plot and mystery and research that our character does, and honestly the horror of this book is really fantastic. It is such a gripping story. It's super entertaining, and the vibes are just so fall. University is literally on an island off the coast of Maine. Like if that doesn't give you autumn vibes, I don't know what does. I really love how the university is described as well. I think that this is just like the perfect paranormal romance to read in autumn. It is a little bit darker though, and it does get a little gory. There is some like body horror elements, so it's not going to be for everyone, but this is my absolute favorite book by Carrie Lake and one of my favorite romances that I've read this year. My next fall book recommendation is The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. This demands to be read in autumn, okay? If you have not read this book yet, I feel like a lot of people have because it came out this year. It was a really big release, but truly, if you haven't read it, you are so blessed. You are so lucky because you get to read this book during fall. This is perfect for this time of year. This is a gothic adult fantasy. There is a romance subplot. The romance is so amazing. Our male main character is one of my favorite male main characters of all time, and I've only read one book featuring him, but he is absolutely amazing. The story has really stuck with me, and I cannot recommend it enough. The setting is very dreary and, like I said, very gothic, a little bit creepy, very mysterious. Our main character is a diviner, and essentially she gets put into this state of sleep and she receives visions from the omens, which are kind of like these god-like beings. She is one of 6 diviners, and she has a very close relationship with all of the diviners, but they start to go missing. So she needs to go find them. She needs to see what is going on, and she does this with the help of Rory, who is a knight, and the two of them come from like totally different backgrounds, totally different lives, but Rory wants to help her. They have a common goal, so they are going to start investigating what happened to the other diviners. There is also a talking gargoyle in this book, and he is the love of my life. He is the star of this book. His humor is just amazing and perfect, and this book is so atmospheric and totally transports you, and you're in this like very gothic, creepy, cobblestone, old village mystery, people are dying story, and then there's like a cute little bat gargoyle just coming up with one-liners. It is seriously such a fun book. I would recommend this to anyone. Whether you are a fantasy romance reader or not, I think this is a book that everyone could find something that they really enjoy, and fall is the perfect time to read it. Moving on to classics. These are my 2 favorite classics I've ever read. First up is my #1 favorite of all time, and that is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. This is an absolutely stunning book. I love it so much. I think about it very often. I've read it years ago, but it just really stuck with me. The writing is absolutely beautiful. The first chapter of this book is one of my favorite chapters of any book that I've ever read. It is just gorgeous. It is so picturesque. It is absolutely beautiful. I love Oscar Wilde's writing, and The Picture of Dorian Gray is just such an incredible story. This is a gothic classic. Dorian Gray is young, beautiful, beloved, extremely popular, and he has a portrait done, and he makes a wish that the portrait will keep aging, but he will not. He will stay youthful and beautiful forever, and basically basically the story descends into madness from there. There is even a touch of horror in this book towards the end, and I just love the messages and themes explored in this book. There's a huge focus on like vanity and pretty privilege and how people are viewed in society, and I just think it is such an incredible book. It's also very, very short, so this is a book that you could like cozy up for an afternoon. It's raining, maybe there's a thunderstorm. Oh my god, that would be literally perfect. That would be the perfect time to pick up The Picture of Dorian Gray. I also think it's a very accessible classic. I did not feel that the barrier to entry with this one was like super complicated, dense writing. I think it is very approachable and just absolutely beautiful. I can't recommend The Picture of Dorian Gray enough. Another classic that I think is perfect for this time of year is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. Another classic I absolutely love. Also another classic that is very, very accessible. This is a little bit of a newer classic. It was published originally in 1938. So I do feel like this is another one that is a bit easier to get into. But if you don't know the story of Rebecca, our main character ends up marrying an older gentleman that she doesn't really know a whole lot about, and she goes off to live in his estate thinking, oh, my life is going to be so great. But very quickly after she gets to this house, she feels this feeling of unwelcome, literally from the staff working in the house, but also just the vibes. The vibes are off, okay? The vibes are off, and our main character is really terrified, and she basically kind of comes to the conclusion, like, I'm really living in the shadow of his former wife, Rebecca, and there seems to be a lot of mystery shrouding what actually happened to her. It's a little bit creepy. It's very, very beautiful. Also an estate on like the English coastline. It's very stormy. That just totally gives fall to me. So for whatever reason, I associate urban fantasy with fall. I don't know why, but also like it makes total sense to me in my head. A magical city is so fall coded to me. So there's many urban fantasies that I absolutely love. The Mortal Instruments series, Crescent City House of Earth and Blood, the City of Gods and Monsters series, but I want to recommend to you the most recent urban fantasy romance that I read that I absolutely loved, that I think totally would be a great book to pick up this fall, and that is Terror at the Gates by Scarlett St. Clair. In this book, we are following a character named Lilith. Lilith lives in this city that is dedicated to sin. It is very dark, it is very dangerous, and in order to survive, she steals, and she particularly steals relics and she sells them off, but she ends up stealing something that does a lot more than she expects it to, and she's really freaked out, doesn't know what to do, who to turn to, so she ends up contacting Zahariv. He is the ruler of this city. They do have a little bit of a past. They are familiar with one another, but the two of them decide to team up and figure out what is going on, what is the mystery surrounding this relic, why are things happening the way that they are. They of course have a romance, and it's so good, so tension filled, so much yearning, and there's also just a lot more to this story. There's a lot of religious commentary, so much mystery, and the ending of this book is just absolutely insane. Like, I cannot stress enough. The ending of this book smacked me in the face. I never, ever, ever in a million years thought that this ending would be this ending, and I feel like I'm pretty good at predicting endings in fantasy books, but this one absolutely threw me for a loop. You should 100% read it. Now, you cannot do a fall book recommendation video without talking about vampires. This is a classic. This is a classic fantasy romance, The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. If you have not read this already, now is the time to do it. Carissa Broadbent's writing in this book in particular is absolutely gorgeous, and there is this like dark atmosphere to her writing. This world is just so interesting, so rich, and the story that she weaves in this first book is just like untouchable. It is so good. We are following our main character, Aurea. She is actually a human girl who has been raised by a vampire since she was very, very young, and once she comes of age, she ends up competing in the set of vampire trials. The winner is gifted whatever they want, so for her, being a human living amongst vampires, she really wants to win this prize, and she ends up competing against Rain. Rain is a vampire with wings. He is amazing. He's absolutely everything. They have their romance, and there's just so much more going on. This is actually going to be a 6-book series composed of 3 sets of duologies. So Aurea and Rain's duology is complete, but the overarching storyline is not. So this is a very exciting series to get into. There's just so much to mine, and I think that the viciousness, the vampires, the darkness, just everything about this book really screams fall to me. Next up is Babel by R.F. Kuang. This book is so good. It takes place at a fictionalized Oxford University, so definitely gives that fall vibe with the university setting, but the story is just incredible. Oh my god, I cried at the ending of this book, did not expect that, but I was very emotional. The story absolutely gripped me. This is like a dark academia historical fantasy, I would say. Our main character's name is Robin. He is orphaned in Canton at a very young age and then ends up getting mysteriously adopted by a man named Professor Lowell. Professor Lowell teaches him a bunch of different things, a bunch of different languages, and then also teaches him the art of silver making, which is essentially a magical power where you can manifest the meaning that is lost in translation. When Robin comes of age, he ends up attending Oxford University and specializes in silver making. This is seen as very prestigious and a high honor, and you are helping out the British Empire, but that also means that you are supporting the colonization of the British Empire. So Robin, as a boy from Canton, really starts to grapple with, what am I doing here? Do I want to do this? This is seen as such a high honor, but this is actually so wrong. And there's a quote from this book that I absolutely love, which is, an act of translation is always an act of betrayal. And that's basically like the entire idea of this book that is explored. And Robin and his friends really go on a journey, and they all have kind of different perspectives and different ideas of what this means. There's also a rebellion group that kind of gets involved, and it's just a really, really wild story, but you follow Robin throughout this whole experience. I love R.F. Kuang's writing. It's very powerful, and yeah, you might cry at the end like me. I was just so overwhelmed by this book. All right, and then a fantasy romance book that I think is absolutely perfect to read this time of year is A Shadow in the Ember by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This is the first book in the Flesh and Fire series, which is a prequel quartet of the From Blood and Ash series. I did DNF the From Blood and Ash series, but I decided to pick this up, and I absolutely loved this book. I really need to continue on with the entire Flesh and Fire quartet. That is one of my goals for this fall. And after DNFing the From Blood and Ash series, I really didn't know what I was going to think of this. I haven't had a lot of luck with JLA's books, but I absolutely loved this. I think it's so fantastic, and I think it is dark and gritty and magical. There are mythical creatures, and it's just such a wonderfully fall-coded book to me. Our main character is an assassin, and she has one goal in life: to make the primal of death fall in love with her and then kill him. And once she does that, there's a prophecy that is said that once he is dead and killed at her hands, that their world will be relieved of this rot. But of course, as in every fantasy romance where our FMC is set to kill our MMC, that doesn't quite work out. And there's just so much more that happens. What I love particularly about this book is the amount of detail and world building and history and lore that JLA has in this book. It was overwhelming at times, honestly. There was a middle part of this book where I think things slowed down a little bit, but I loved absolutely everything else, and I can still appreciate that this is a denser fantasy romance, and I like that. Things did not move super quickly. I really feel like we took a lot of time to establish the world and why things are the way that they are, and I'm just so intrigued to continue on with the series. And I think if you have not picked this book up yet, now would be a perfect time to do it. All right, friends, so that is going to be it for my fall book recommendations. I would love to hear some of your fall book recommendations. If there is particularly a fantasy or a fantasy romance that you think is great to read this time of year, please let me know down in the comments, or please leave a fall leaf emoji. Please make sure that you're following me on all of my social media. My TikTok, Instagram, and Goodreads is linked down below. I also have my Patreon link down below. That is where I host reading sprints. We have a fantasy romance book club. I post bonus videos, and we're also currently doing a series read along for the Gods and Monsters series by Amber V. Nicole. I really appreciate that you watched this video. I hope that you're having a fantastic day. I love you all so much, and I will catch you guys in the next one.